September 15th, 2020. Welcome to all who have joined for our meeting. We only have a few left to go this year, so we're getting there. We have a couple of items, ongoing items that we're going to take at the top of the agenda. The first is a budget discussion. We are poised to pass the budget on Thursday. Administrator Ludo has given us his recommendations. We have looked at those, responded to those, and he brought the other commissioners in the loop on that. And so Jeff has now sent back a memo in response to what we gave him to say, hey, thank you for that. Here's either what we've already done, what we're already doing, or how we anticipate moving forward with that item. So that was a memo that went out, I believe it was yesterday. So it's a few pages long and it addresses all those items. So I don't know, Jeff, if you intend to go through that document or if it was just for, I think it might be useful to go through. Ladies, do we have a preference here? I'm happy to go one way or the other.
It doesn't matter to me, but the public may want to know what sent to us. Yeah. So
I have no preference.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Jeff, let me then kick it over to you to proceed.
I'm happy to, thank you, Madam President. I'm happy to walk through it briefly here. What we attempted to do was just to take the budget feedback we'd received from board offices and distill it down into a memo that just provides a recommendation on how to proceed on each of these. I'll just walk through each of them very quickly. If there's questions, happy to go into more detail. The first was the incorporation of satellite offices. I think there was a desire to see the ability for the county to have satellite offices out for the convenience of the public in some of the outlying suburban locations. Couple of things here. Number one, we are working with the Board of Elections to use their early voting site as a potential spot for some field service operations and others who might find that to be a good location as really a landing spot for folks who are out in the field and maybe inconvenient or less efficient to come back downtown. At the same time, I think that the real desire here was to even look further out the suburban communities as well. And we will continue doing that. The facility master planning efforts that we continue to do, as well as the responses from departments on remote workforce plans that they have now that we're seeing how much of our workforce actually can continue to work remotely, and where that geography corresponds with that I'm hoping probably by the end of the first quarter, we should be in a position to have overlaid all that data and to make a recommendation back to the board as to where a satellite operation makes sense. And if it comes back that it doesn't make sense, but there's still desire from the board for some specific reasons to include some satellites out in the suburban areas, we can have that conversation then as well. But I think the board has concurred that it makes sense where possible to integrate it with where some of our other county operations may have some need as well. So we are moving forward on that. There is a question about the allocations, the specific budgetary allocations for commission offices. Those will remain unchanged in the current budget. There was a question about the part-time positions for boards and commissions. That was actually included, as the board is aware, in the 2020 budget, put on hold because of COVID. So it is now back reinitiated in this year's budget. We did, responding to the request from the board, we recommend that we do earmark some dollars for interpretation services for our traditional board meetings. I recommended a placeholder amount in there. We'll probably accommodate that by slightly reducing some of the funding in our non-departmental accounts. So there should be no impact to the budget there. There was a recommendation on bonus pay allocations. This was one where I think the intent was the administration had recommended a 1.5% bonus to employees who had been furloughed during the year. I think the board had come back, at least one commission officer had come back and and suggested perhaps utilizing, without expanding the funding pool, utilizing the funding a little bit differently to accommodate for individual employees who may have gone well above and beyond during this COVID pandemic, and making sure that the budget was set up to reward those folks as well. So we took a little bit different spin on the same concept, and that would be the recommendation at this point would be to set up kind of a tiered approach where if there were folks and employees who were furloughed that were not otherwise made whole through federal unemployment programs, et cetera, that we would still apply that 1.5%. If, however, there were other, to go the on the flip side of that coin, if there were employees who may have gone above and beyond and performed exemplary work during this time, that we would make the this pool available for one-time bonuses of up to $1,000 for those employees. And we call out specifically 2 tiers there. One, it would be on a department by department basis. The other would be specifically recognizing folks who worked on cross-departmental teams like our CARES Act implementation team, that type of thing. So that is there for the board's consideration. We had a request to look at affordable housing in the administration's work plan for 2021. There will be an emphasis on creating an affordable housing plan for the county, which will look specifically at the role and the niche that the county should play in coordinating its affordable housing work. Some of which, as the board knows, there's already work going on through various county departments. So some of this will look at how we best coordinate that work. And then we'll look at whether there are some gaps out there where the county can and should also fill in that gap, and what it would take to do that. So we had recommended, in this memo, I'd recommended an earmark against the general fund reserve of up to $1 million. Again, this wouldn't be appropriated yet. This would just be an earmark against the reserve, that as we put together this plan, if there were either planning costs or something that comes out of the plan that we would want to get started on quickly, we would have to come back to the board to get that appropriated and to have the board obviously agree with and approve the use. So this would just be an earmark against our general fund reserve, not an appropriated amount in the actual budget. We included a recommendation on leave policies as well. There was a recommendation about trying to make the county's personnel policies a bit more flexible as it relates to the attraction and retention of talent primarily, in particular as it relates to the ability for individuals to take paternity and maternity leave and not have that leave count against them or have to use other accrued time. So one of the things that we've done, I forwarded along to the board, was we looked at all of the different types of categories of leave that we have. And I think the board will see that we do have a fairly robust number of leave programs, which I think puts us on par with a lot of different employers, public and private. That being said, I don't know that we have anything that specifically addresses the precise policy goal that the board would be shooting for with this. And so we do want to try to accommodate that. What I recommend here is that we assess this a little bit more. There are still some questions we have about how we would go about doing it, the legality of addressing it through certain types of leave versus other types of leave. And I just want to make sure it is a big policy issue. I just want to make sure that if we're going to go down this road, that we make sure that we do it thoughtfully and do it correct. So I recommended that we get back to the board no later than February 1st, 2021 on this particular item, at which point we would have a more robust cost analysis done, as well as some different options for the board here. There was a question about the county's building inventory and making sure that we were continuing to look at our buildings for potential disposition of unused or unneeded building stock, especially as we have the workforce consolidating with a more remote approach. That may be more possible in the next year and longer. The the current budget as recommended does include dollars with our architectural partners to do routine assessments and analysis like this. So I think the dollars are there for that type of analysis for consolidation. To the degree that we find that there is something much more significant needed because of a specific building opportunity that would be on the county's shoulders to bear the burden of from a cost perspective, we'd obviously have to return to the board to request an appropriation for that. But the basic work of assessing consolidation opportunities and defragmentation opportunities does exist within the current budget as recommended. There was a request to assess Justice Center treatment costs. As the board was informed during the budget presentations, the expanded pods at the Justice Center are anticipated to go online in the third or fourth quarter of 2021. The budget does include money for staffing costs associated with those. It does not yet include the treatment programming dollars for a couple of reasons. Number one is we ultimately will have to go out to competitively procure those, so we don't have a completely accurate assessment of what those costs will be. We have a decent idea, but we don't have them procured for yet. So that's one issue. The second issue is we are still looking for and exploring federal grants for this, and want to ensure that number one, that we continue to look for that. Number two, that we don't run into problems as some federal grants require that the county has not budgeted previously for certain dollars. We want to make sure that we don't harm our chances for grant funding there as well. There was a request to look at the issue of body cameras. I put some cost data in here as well based upon our last bid on this with the sheriff's office. Just recommended here that if the board wishes to go down this route, that we look at it as a potential capital expense out of our economic and community development, or new economic and community development grant program. I think that would give the board the best ability on an annual basis to determine whether or not this is a priority and whether or not to continue it as a priority, as opposed to setting up a one-time program and having that program continue to exist. So I put a couple of questions in the memo of things that we would like to continue to work through if we do decide to make this a priority in that grant program. There was a question about veterans cemetery work. This was something that I think there is a past precedent for the county working on in conjunction with community partners. Certainly not from an administration perspective, no objection to the concept and the program. We did just recommend that to the degree we do this in the future, that we entertain these on a one-time basis. That if the need arises, that we work on the program, but not to establish an actual program. We just didn't have enough information to know what to really highlight the demand and a consistent demand associated with this. We also know from past work that we've done on these that the county's grant program or grant to the community has been a very small amount of the overall restoration dollars. And so didn't want to set us up for a much larger spending need down the road. So that was our recommendation on the veterans work. And finally, although it was not a specific request or feedback of the board, there was a lot of feedback during the budget presentations on human services funding. And I think, as the board knows, the administration has recognized that and I know the board has recognized it very upfront, the incredibly difficult times that our nonprofit community is facing. The board hears that directly. The administration hears it. One of the past members of our county family, Moira Weir, is now with the United Way and provides us with a lot of information back on that as well. The recommendation here, though, does indicate that we do have a structurally balanced budget for 2021. We do have a lot of risks that continue to present as it relates to that structural balance, not the least of which is the economic climate for next year. I think the request of the Human Services Chamber was a 1.5% budget allocation out of the general fund. That 1.5% accounts to over $4 million of county general fund money, which is when we are looking to balance primarily use our general fund to balance our mandated services, elections, corrections, the courts, crime lab, or development services that are mandated and required, 911. That's a large budget number for the county to balance against. So what I would just recommend is, as the board has done, especially if you harken back to the affordable housing conversation, that where there is a policy priority, in this case, affordable housing, the administration will coordinate those efforts, and we'll come back with a recommendation on how to address that. So I would continue to recommend that from the general fund perspective, we look at these services on a subject matter by subject matter basis and attempt to address those as it relates to some of our broader use of dollars. I don't want to forget that we do have restricted funds, voted property tax levies, community development block grants, our job and family services, where we spend millions and millions of dollars a year on a lot of this work related to social services. Through our community development block grant program, I know we fund a lot of the individual institutions as well who would benefit through this work as well. So that's our recommendation. My recommendation as it relates to human services funding. And that really brings me to the end of the memo. So I hope I got through it as quickly as needed, Madam President. If there's any questions, I'm happy to go into more depth on any one of these, but didn't want to take too long exploring the response.
Yeah, well, I just want to thank you for the response. It's very thorough and very thoughtful, especially as it relates to some of these suggestions that will require some ongoing work. The body camera issue comes to mind because we're going to obviously need to be in partnership with others related to that. The affordable housing piece is an ongoing priority of the commission, and I'm glad we've at least earmarked some money in case we need some towards the end of the year, given the results of the task force that's going to look into that, and some of the human services issues, and just really all of it. So I appreciate your efforts here to be responsive. It's just a matter of getting these things on the radar, I think, from my perspective, and making sure that they are top of mind as we work through this budget and then future budgets, coming in front of the commission. So thanks for your work here, Jeff. I personally appreciate it. Commissioner Summer-Dumas?
I just appreciate the summary. Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Commissioner
As usual, very thorough work, and good luck with that.
a lot of work to be done, Commissioner Burke. We're getting there, right? We've made leaps and bounds of progress in the budget.
It really is. It's wonderful.
So more to come. All right. So Jeff, I was just saying that, so on Thursday, we're poised to vote on the budget. Is there anything else that you want to bring to the attention of the board before we move into that meeting on Thursday?
Nothing additional. We will take, assuming the board get general consensus that the approach the administration is taking in our response to the budget feedback, we will incorporate these as indicated into the final version of the budget, and also into the version of the administration's work plan that we kick off in January. So some of the things where there may not be a budgetary impact or a budgetary allocation, but where there is work associated with it. For example, the leave policies, those types of things. Assuming that I have concurrence from the board, we'll go ahead and modify our budget associated with this, as well as the administration's work plan. But that would be it. I think John is on as well. John, anything additional from a technical perspective that we need to bring forward before Thursday?
I don't think so. We will go ahead and develop a budget resolution for Thursday.
Okay, great. And I think Jeff and John, you have heard that this board concurs with the information brought forward in the memo. So I am hopeful that you will incorporate all of that into the budget.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anything else, commissioners?
Nothing else. Thank you.
And I think Thank
All
you.
right, very good. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is an update regarding the racism as a public health crisis. And this one is related to the Office of Family Voice. So I don't know who is poised to kick this one off. Commissioner Parks?
So Robert, well, I assume Commissioner Parks. I know Robert and Tim are both on from the administration's perspective, but I would assume Commissioner Parks would have some opening comments.
Yep.
I do. So this is another step in meeting the objectives of our resolution that that recognizes racism as a public health crisis. Last week we talked about the sheriffs and the bystander program, and also the education that will take place down at the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center. Today, we have Mr. Robert Bell and Tim McCartney here, and what this is going to address the expansion of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. So with that, take it away.
Tim, did you want to start with just the overview?
Sure. Thanks, Robert.
Okay.
Yeah. So good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you for having us here.
Good afternoon.
And we are very, very excited to give you an update on where we are. I also asked, because they did the majority of the work, Talia Bryan and Margie Weaver, to join us as well. And I can no longer see the screen. Talia?
Yes, so we should be seeing a PowerPoint presentation. Can everyone see that? So
We can see it. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes.
I can see nothing. But I'll let Talia and Margie go through it since you can hear me. First of all, again, we are really, really excited about this program. We're going to give you about a 60-second update of what we've already done, and then what we believe, with your blessing today and our ability to answer any of your outstanding questions, our path forward to make this a reality. And again, we just couldn't be more excited about this. So Talia, if you want to share what we've done, and then Margie will share our next steps, and then we'll answer any questions or have any discussion you would like.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So after receipt of our task pursuant to the Board of County Commissioners resolution, we formed a team consisting of the Assistant Director of Children's Services, staff from Children's Services, our Clients' Rights Office, Community Outreach, Contract Services, and our Multi-Systems Director. And we all came together, what felt like weekly, to pretty much develop a plan and a framework for the program. We reviewed nationally recognized evidence-informed peer-to-peer programs nationwide, as well as some programs that we've had in Ohio. We also developed a draft RFP for the program, and we've secured $30,000 of planning grant from Casey Family Programs, really to help support the program and its mission of mentoring and empowering parents to really effectively advocate for themselves and their families through development, support, and guidance from the program. And so we've also recently completed a review of our research and recommendations with the director, county administrator, and all of the commissioners now officially. And we've also presented and vetted the program with the Human Services Planning Committee. So those are a few of the action steps that we've taken so far. And Margie will present our next steps.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us. So for next steps, here today, we welcome any outstanding issues or questions or input or feedback that you'd have for us today. We, from here, plan to start re-engaging our planning team, our core team, along with Robert Bell, helping bring him up to speed, and making any necessary modifications or refinements to our scope of work or our request for proposal. And then obviously we'd want to continue engagement program stakeholders. As we discussed, this is very exciting. It's new. We want it to be successful and we want to promote its success. And we know that involves engagement of our typical stakeholders that we work with, but also outreach to our community at large. We'll be obviously putting this out for bid and through a request for proposal. And that also will entail creating a review committee for selection of a vendor. And we always typically engage a diverse team for reviews for contracts. We think that's very important to have different perspectives and bring those to the table in terms of fair selection process. And oftentimes, I'll just note that we typically engage outside stakeholders in that process in some way. And likely one of the things that we discussed was that it would be important to engage stakeholders, particularly in this selection process, and maybe we would like to consider bringing a parent on board to help us, or a caregiver, to again get their perspective and their lens on this selection. And then finally, we would heavily, from the JFS side, heavily support Robert and the selected vendor and program implementation. We feel that's just really critical. Again, this is very exciting, but it's a heavy lift, and we want to make sure that we do everything we can to support it.
So with that, my vision has been restored, so I can see things. Commissioners, questions or thoughts or comments that we can answer today?
Is Robert still on? I'm wondering if we should hear from Robert.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I want to say thank you to Talia and Margie and to Tim, because this is truly equity work, and I just really want to commend them on what they're doing so far, and the plans. And I'm really looking forward to working with them. So thanks a lot for involving me in this and involving the Department of Economic Inclusion and Equity.
Okay, so Robert, the role that you will play in this is what?
Well, to really help them with the rest of the next steps. I mean, then it will also become under under the Department of Equity and Inclusion, Inclusion and Equity, and be ran out of that. So I will be participating now fully as a member of the team, the review team, with the RFPs, with the selections, and with the implementation of the program.
Okay, and so what we're making clear here is, so the RFP will be released. There will be a review team. Once it's selected, it will come under the supervision and management of your office.
Right, absolutely.
I see. Okay, thank you. That is so cool.
Yeah, it gives us a greater arm's length from child welfare, but we know that Robert, doesn't have all the contracting resources that we have, so we want to be able to help him, get things up and running, and then turn it over to him to manage the contract.
Mm-hmm. So, guys, I'm not so sure that it has been fully explained what this office will do. So, will you help us with that?
Okay. With the Office of Family Voice?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Tim, you want to?
Sure. It's similar to the presentation that we went, and Margie and Talia will jump in when I go wrong. But basically, it's an opportunity, particularly for new people that enter the child welfare system, to really have parent partners who have been through this process before that can help them understand what's happening, because there are just a large number of players in the child welfare system. Clearly, when people come into it, their life is in stress and can be in chaos. And a lot of things happen very, very quickly that they may or may not understand. They have rights.
Tim, excuse me, do you mean child welfare or child foster care?
Child welfare in general, yes, but before they would enter foster care, first there would be, the investigatory process that happens with our office, and then the recommendations that we would make with the court, all those, the guardians, all those players that, and it's like anytime anybody enters a new system, a very large system and complex system, if they have somebody next to them or somebody they can reach out to, regardless of what the system is, to say, I've been through this before, and here's how you navigate it. Here's what this means. Here's what you can do here. Here's who this person is. All those sorts of things are really what we're, it's like when we start a new job or college, the buddy system sort of thing. It's that sort of mentality that we want to engender, because what that will do, if successful, is improve the relationship between our clients and their worker, because if that relationship is built on trust and communication and understanding, it means the outcomes for that family are likely to be better. And that's certainly what our research showed, that in one case in the California program, families were 4 times more likely to reunite with their children once this program was in place. And those are some of the outcomes that we hope to achieve, and to build the trust with our department, in the community, but as well with those individual families.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And a reunification is the goal.
Yes, and I'll let Margie can speak to that better than anybody. She's dedicated her life to that effort. Margie, you want to say a few words about that?
So yes, essentially, obviously our ultimate goal is to help families recover, develop, increase their own protective capacity to parent their children absent child welfare involvement. That's, obviously a federal mandate, but obviously it's a philosophy that we embrace. We know that children do best, and that's researched as well. Children do best with their own family, their parents or kin.
But even if that can't happen, then at least if we have this program there, that people have a better understanding of what's happening, when it's happening, so that they're at least making an informed, educated decision about what they do. Because sometimes people just aren't, they may have a mental health issue or a substance abuse issue that they're just not prepared to address. And we try to get them through that, but sometimes that just can't happen, or there can be other circumstances.
And the program is really, we wanted to focus on, as we're drafting it, on really empowering families and allowing them the tools and resources to really become, their own self-advocates and feeling comfortable being their advocate, advocates for themselves.
There was also some research out there that found that children were less likely to return to care once they were reunified, which is obviously a great success. We also would like to also benefit, have some secondary benefits, really kind of, this really is about partnering with parents in a different way and a better way across the system, but also learning from parents about how we can do better, how our systems can do better. So some influence over policies and practices is our hope for the larger system.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is good stuff. Couldn't be happier. This hits the mark for the objective we were reaching for in the resolution. And what it means is parents or caretakers who find themselves in this position will have someone to go to talk to, and to advocate for them. And that is so important. And the other thing that we cannot miss is it gives a greater opportunity for cultural understanding. So thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is very exciting. I mean, this has been, I know, a couple years in the making here, but my gratitude for Commissioner Parks for putting it at the top of the list of things that we need to accomplish by the end of the year. I really think it's going to help those folks that are really in such a stressful time to begin with, and then don't understand a system that they find themselves in. And Commissioner Parks, I think you were with me when we joined Senator Thomas, and talked to some families who were involved in child welfare and I think the foster care system, and they were really frustrated because they didn't understand what they needed to do to best enable them to get their kids back. And so,
and Madam President, that was before I even got here.
Yeah. So this has been a little while in the making. So, Hamilton County does tend to be on the cutting edge when it comes to child welfare work and JFS work. So this is just another example of that. But I am especially grateful for the research that was conducted to make sure that this model is the best in class that we're going to offer here in Hamilton County. So thank you all for your work on it. We're really excited to see this launch.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. This is wonderful. I appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
And I have a few comments also, Madam President. As you were saying, we've been saying for a while that families are important. So we not only said it, but we did it through the Office of Family Voice. And as Margie was saying, you empower the individual and then you empower the family, which empowers the community. So when you talk about a voice, to have knowledge, which the people that are working in that department will give them, their voice will be even heard even louder because they know what they're talking about. So this is just awesome. We didn't just do it, we established a whole office to meet their needs. So I think it's just great.
Very good.
Thank you. So thank you so much. And Robert, you have something else to talk about, don't you? The second thing is in our resolution is that we committed to begin the process of conducting an economic disparity study. So if Robert and Jeff will give an update on that.
Let me put my slide in.
Okay, so what was that, the right intro?
That's great. That's great. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you just fine.
What I'd like to do is, and I want to thank the commissioners for the resolution and also for the opportunity to give you an update, because I think it has a lot to do with what we just heard about, but a lot of other things that I think the county has some very good opportunities to other kind of programs and strategies that the county has an opportunity to implement. Let me just review a couple of the points in the resolution that affected my department. And the first was the expansion of economic inclusion to promote cultural engagement within the Hamilton County community, with a focus on connecting vulnerable, minority, and poverty-stricken communities to resources within and outside of Hamilton County, capable of addressing the needs of these communities and more effectively connecting these communities to the work and programming of the county. So that we just heard an example of that with the Office of Family Voice, and I'm going to talk about a couple other examples of that we've been working on as well. The other point in the resolution was to change the name of the Office of Economic Inclusion to Economic Inclusion and Equity. And changing the name is going to have some major implications for the work that we do. And then the third part is the process of conducting and implementing a disparity study for Hamilton County. And I put a copy of the poster that we're putting together for a program we're doing with Closing the Health Gap called Community Resources, Inc. And that program is a grassroots effort to help people really understand and address the issues that they're facing with COVID-19, as well as getting a lot of research on the impact of these vulnerable populations. So you'll be seeing this poster around Hamilton County for the next few weeks. I want to take a few minutes, and some of you already know pretty much about this, but I just want to take a few minutes about what the equity framework is. Because changing the name, it's going to have some major implications, and I want to explain why. The equity framework, which is being utilized across the country, takes a direct look at the various forms of bias and prejudice, which includes individual, institutional, and systemic forms of racism. Equity mandates that a group's race or any other demographic category it belongs to should not be the main determinant of that group's success. Equity requires strategies that promote fair treatment, equal access, opportunity, and advancement for all people, while, and this is important, at the same time striving to identify and implement and eliminate barriers that are preventing the full participation of some groups. And those barriers do exist, and we really need to work on addressing those as well. But tackling equity issues is not easy, and it requires the understanding of root causes of outcome disparities within our society. And that brings me to, I don't know if you can see it through this slide, but in the background, there's a large, beautiful lake. And we use the analogy of fish versus the lake. And what we say is, when you go out to a beautiful lake and you're sitting there enjoying the scenery and stuff like that, but you notice in the lake that here and there are a few fish that have died and floated to the surface. And your first thought is, those poor fish, I wonder what's going on with them. Then you come back the next day or a few days later, and you see hundreds and thousands of fish floating on the surface. What is your next thought? We have to look at that lake. And so that the whole process of looking at racial disparities from the view of the fish, which is the traditional view, and then the view of the lake, which is really a new way of looking at this. And I'll give you an example of looking at racial disparities from the fish's view. A lot of reasons we come up with are lack of education, lack of motivation, don't really care that much about health, choosing to be around people that they just know, trusting the wrong people, and living in high crime neighborhoods. Because that looks at the individual fish or person, and we focus on that. And that's been the traditional way that we have addressed racial disparities. But the lake view focus is different. The lake view is the list of, when you're looking at it through the lake focus, is looking at barriers to career advancement, lack of livable wages, high cost of education, poor health systems, no role models, segregated communities, and few economic and safety support systems. Okay, there's nothing wrong with focusing on the fish. Individually, people need help too. But if we're really talking about long-term systemic change, we have to deal with the equity framework, and that's why that's so important. As part of that, and as part of the expansion of the Department of Economic Inclusion, we are bringing on a community engagement administrator. And that job is going to be looking at implementing cultural engagement activities to connect vulnerable minority and marginalized groups with resources inside and outside of Hamilton County. This includes current or potential clients of Hamilton County and potential employees and businesses in the county area. And those are some of the community engagement is a major piece of this. And it gets back to what Tim and Talia and Margie said. If you really want to partner with the residents and the community people, and then you want them to be a true partner and engage them in the solution. That's what they're talking about doing with the Office of Family Voice. That's what we're talking about doing with a lot of the activities that we're looking forward to with Hamilton County, is engaging these people in solutions. And I'll tell you, we're also looking at new tools that we need to use when we're talking about racial, we're talking about the equity framework. To give you an example, there is a racial dot map that was developed by the University of Virginia and MIT. That's amazing, because what the researchers did was took the census data and used color pixels and went by neighborhood, and they dotted in the neighborhood, and they used those pixels to list out the demographics. The white, the black, the Asians, the Hispanics, and they use different colors. Well, what those maps do, they show two very important things. One is that there's a lot, they show some true racial integration going on, but they also will show racial segregation. And that's something that we really know, because if you look at, I'm not sure if you can see it well enough, but in this map, and this is Greater Cincinnati right here, blue is for the white population, green is for the black. If you notice something, what strikes you really interesting about this map when you look at it that way? Because, and I'm gonna tell you what's fascinating, they use actual demographic numbers to come up with these colors, and it's amazing. And we can do that by neighborhood, by community, by anything, and this data is really available. But the thing that struck me was how isolated some of these pockets are. You look at the
He's frozen.
Yeah, you're frozen, Robert.
Hey, Robert, don't freeze now. Okay. Okay, guys, so what happens now?
Well, let's give him 1 minute. Robert, you're frozen on the screen. Looks like he's working from home. All right, let's give him 1 minute here, and then I don't know.
Hey, Bridget, what do you think?
I think it looks like he is maybe.
I'm afraid of that. Okay, I lost my connection. Sorry.
Okay, good.
I got it back. Sorry. Okay. All right. So let me go back just a second. Let me go back a little bit. So what we're doing, the new position has been of the Community Engagement Administrator has been developed and approved. We've received a number of applications that we've reviewed, and we have a hiring interview team, and 4 candidates have been selected for interviews, and those interviews are going to be taking place over the next 2 weeks. So we're really in the way of securing a person for that position, and we're really excited about it. So the next piece of the resolution was the implementation of the disparity study. So Hamilton County has begun the process of implementing a study of the utilization of minority, women, and small businesses. And this research is designed to evaluate whether businesses have equal access to contracting opportunities in Hamilton County prime contracts and associate subcontracts. The study will also evaluate barriers to Hamilton County contracting and recommend strategies to ensure all firms of Hamilton County can participate and equally participate in county opportunities. So we have requests for qualifications completed. We did competitive solicitation and a vendor was selected. We're finalizing negotiations and final contract at this point. And the disparity studies plan and timeline are being finalized. And we're looking at the disparity study taking part through 2021. It's about a 12-month process, but we're looking to have the disparity study expert consultant on board this month or by early January, and then the disparity study people on, and the process started the first quarter of 2021. So that's where we are with that, and we're really excited about that. We think we have a very competent and experienced consultant expert that is working with us that will help us put the whole thing together and also help us monitor it and develop recommendations down the road. The next piece of this, again, of equity is vulnerable populations. And we want to connect these populations to resources capable of addressing their needs. And this is just an example. We had a child care provider relief program that we just completed. We allocated over $636,000 to 83 child care providers. And the reason is that these providers had agreed to stay open during the first few months of the pandemic to serve first responders, essential and frontline workers, and they also served low-income and minority families, the majority of them. The awards were reimbursement for budget deficits they occurred due to health and safety protocol required to address COVID-19. We're finding that nationally, the projections are 20% of daycare centers are not going to last till January. And so what we're doing is we're really trying to help these companies, these providers that we're helping stay open and continue to serve the thousands of low-income and minority families that they serve. And it's really crucial. And I really appreciate the county taking this on and helping, allowing us to take this on. And we work very closely with 4Cs for Children, which is a child care educational and advocacy group to really get this going. And we put a lot of time and effort in helping these, especially the small minority and those companies that serve low-income neighborhoods and low-income families. And we think we did a good job on that. I really want to say thanks to Holly for her guidance and direction on this, and to Bryant Wamsley and Melanie Augustine, who were two of the people that worked on the team. We really think this is, and we're really hearing that this has made a major impact on the child care providers, especially in our vulnerable community. The other piece is mitigating COVID-19 on vulnerable populations. And that was that, here it is again, that's the poster we're going to do. And this is a grassroots project. And I think we're spending like $120,000 to increase the awareness, build knowledge, and expand capacity to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on vulnerable low-income populations. And the great thing about this is we are involving the community in the creation of the solutions, in the creation of the messages, to help support, one, continued use of health and safety protocols, two, getting the vaccine, getting the testing done, and three, the vaccine. And we know we got our road cut out for us with the vaccine because of the historical issues and everything that's like that. But we're invited, we're doing research. We're having focus groups. We're working with Closing the Health Gap to do a lot of this groundwork where we're involving hundreds of community residents and really trying to work out how they're going to address it. Because one of the things that we're telling them is that you have to save you. You have to save you. And we can't wait for other people to do it. And I think that message is coming across very strong. And that's one of our first billboards that are going up. But we're going to be doing a lot of social media, a lot of radio, a lot of TV ads for the next three weeks or so to really push this and also to make this a strong push within the minority and low income community, but by the people in those communities. And that's involving engaging the communities in the solution to the issues. And then the other thing is ensuring vulnerable populations benefit from PPE distributions, and emergency management and Homeland Security has been a strong partner with helping to ensure that vulnerable communities have access to these resources that the county has. And this is just a few examples of what we were able to do. Over 34,000 disposable masks to public housing residents and seniors, 17,000 PPE items to vulnerable communities like Lincoln Heights, Forest Park, a lot of low-income neighborhoods as well. So we really spent a lot of time this year working on these programs, but that's all about the whole equity thing. How can we engage our community in the solution that we're trying to achieve? Two other items I want to talk about that really has to deal with equity as well. And these are things that the commissioners approved of. You approved the small business enterprise policy months ago. And I just want to talk about how that supports the whole equity framework. One of the things about equity is equal opportunity. Well, one of the things that we have done is we've got some aspirational goals for participation of 30 SBE, 30%, 15% for supplies, 30% for construction, 15% for supplies, and 15% for professional services, which are goals that we have aspirational and really push our different departments to achieve those goals. We also, when soliciting for micro purchases whenever possible, first effort should be made to find vendors from the bold list. And that is a list of all of the small, minority, and women-owned businesses that want to do business with Hamilton County. And the departments are really utilizing that list. I'm getting calls all the time of them pushing that, really asking questions about it. If they can't find somebody on that list, they call me and then I'll try to find them in other ways. When soliciting for small purchases whenever possible, at least one vendor from the bold list, because the small purchases, that's under 100,000, 150,000 for federal and under 50,000 for local. They do some competitive quotes. Well, they get 3 quotes. One of those quotes have to come off the contractor's bold list to really give them an opportunity to participate in all of these small purchase opportunities that Hamilton County does, millions and millions of dollars. The last piece is the new employment policies. And the whole goal is to create a workplace environment that is inclusive and to recruit, retain, and support a workforce that reflects the population served and the diversity of Hamilton County. There are several strategies that I just want to mention, and I'm working with HR and Frank and his team. One of the major strategies is to assess organizational culture routinely and consistently using best practices regarding valuing diversity and inclusion, involving managers and supervising an employee on the ongoing development and evaluation of initiatives and activities to ensure a diverse and inclusive workforce, while complying with merit principles and applicable state, local, or federal laws. 3, provide routine and comprehensive workforce development program at all levels. And that's part of the work that Frank is doing, and I have been working with them and doing with the Freedom Center, with making sure that we have true equity, the diversity, inclusion, and equity training going on for all of our employees, especially during the rest of 2021. And then establishing recruitment and retention systems that respect the rights and dignity of all persons and are monitored routinely and work to continually improve existing recruitment, retention, and promotion practices to ensure a diverse workforce. One of the things Jeff and I have talked about, and I've worked with Jeff on this, is each department has a role to play in this. Each department, we're asking each department to develop a plan on how they're going to do the new inclusion, equal employment equity, and also the small business equity strategy. And so we're gonna give them some time to do that, because things have been really hectic with staff changes and the pandemic. But 2021 is when those plans, and I'll be reporting during 2021 routinely to the commissioners on those plans and the implementation of those plans by the BOCC departments. And that's it.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Bell. It looks, this has just come so far. It started as an idea, as a thought, as a conversation. And I think it is a big example of what can happen when you work together. Not everybody has the same background or even holds the same priorities. But when we communicate, get together, cut the issue, decide on what is important, we can move mountains. And it's an example that teamwork makes the dream work. And I just appreciate it so much. I appreciate you, Jeff, my fellow commissioners, and just everybody for making this work. This is phenomenal for Hamilton County. And I'm just so excited. And I'll be watching.
Right.
So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Robert, for the update. It's really helpful. It's a culture shift, is what it is. And we've started it a number of years ago, but really doubling down here with the resolution. So thanks to everybody for the work on this. Very grateful. Commissioner Simmer, comments?
Yeah, just a couple comments. Just a great job on the presentation, Robert, of course, but also your commitment to making this happen. And thank Jeff for that also. But just it's just a great endeavor. Hamilton County is doing some great things, and I include this in it. I was a little, when I think I had written your little email, because I was saying economic inclusion, and I had a few questions about, is this about just economic development and people building things? But you provided so much clarity today that economics can be as little as who you hire to provide them to make a better salary. So it's not just building things. And so I think you just made it, even though we do build the person by them feeling better about what they're making, but you provided so much clarity on why we say economic inclusion. And it's just a great thing. We're just doing great things in Hamilton County. And I'm glad that you're a part of it. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Robert. All right, let's move on then to item number 3. So we've got a couple of resolutions here related to CARES Act funding. In fact, there are 3. So I'm going to turn this over to Holly so that she can remind us what we're accomplishing through these resolutions.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you, Madam President. The first resolution on the agenda is a resolution authorizing an amendment to the agreement that we have with St. Vincent de Paul for rental and utility assistance. This is, of course, as Commissioner Driehaus mentioned, through our CARES Act, which at this point is scheduled to end on 12/30 of this month. And this amendment will add $100,000 to St. Vincent de Paul's agreement and allow them to assist approximately 30 more households who have submitted applications to St. Vincent de Paul. The administration recommends approval of this resolution, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, why don't you walk through all three of them, Holly?
Sure. The next resolution is an amendment to the agreement we have with the City of Cincinnati to include reimbursement of expenses for the Duke Energy Convention Center. As you can imagine, there are significant expenses for cleaning, PPE, HVAC work for that facility, as well as, so that's in the amount of $1 million, which is in our CARES Act plan. And in addition, roughly $622,000 is included in that amendment for eligible expenses and costs incurred for the operation of the Over the Rhine quarantine shelter for individuals experiencing homelessness.
Mm-hmm.
And the last item related to CARES on the agenda is a resolution authorizing a grant agreement with the University of Cincinnati Medical Center to purchase equipment for two types of programs. It's in the amount of a total grant amount of $796,227,000. And the two programs, the bulk of the grant is related to equipment to establish a multidisciplinary environment to provide a full spectrum of care for those, what you've probably heard the term as COVID long haul patients. So there's a lot of equipment needs to help better evaluate and diagnose those patients and those symptoms. The second piece of this grant is for equipment related to the increase in admissions that we are seeing. And in the amount of about $64,000, UC Medical Center will purchase portable and bedside ultrasound equipment. This will limit COVID-19 patients being transported in the hospital, as well as allow for more safe cleaning of the equipment, as well as additional iPads to help patients communicate with their families. And again, recommend approval of this grant. We do have, I just want to make sure she's introduced, Stephanie Donnelly, I believe is on the, I won't say on the call, but on the computer screen in my world. And she is the business administrator who applied for this grant with the Department of Internal Medicine, the Division of Cardiology. So I just want to recognize Stephanie Donnelly. I didn't know if she wanted to add anything, if the board would allow that.
Sure. Good afternoon. Oh, you're on mute.
There we go. She allowed me to unmute myself. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it having this opportunity. So we are really excited about this. As many of you have heard the term long hauler, we have been in the process of initiating a clinic to support these patients. So the opportunity for this funding will allow these patients to receive a full spectrum of care from a multidisciplinary team all in one location. So instead of coming back to visit 4 or 5 times, you will be able to get a large diagnosis all in one. We'll do a telehealth visit to begin with, get a plan of care established with that patient. So when they come in, they have the full optimum care within that one visit. So we'll do some diagnostic testing. They'll meet with several providers that we identify as being necessary, and then they'll go home with an established plan of care for follow-up and exercises to do at home. So this is a great opportunity for us, and we appreciate you taking that under consideration.
Thank you. All right. Any questions or comments related to these 3 resolutions?
Just one comment. I'm just glad that we're able to expend some more of the CARES Act money and that we're able to expand our reach and help more people. So that's all I have.
Ditto. Thanks.
Okay. All right. I'm going to do these all together. So I'm going to move that we approve of the resolution authorizing an amendment to St. Vincent de Paul Rental Utility Assistance Agreement to increase funding by $100,000, and the resolution authorizing an amendment to the City of Cincinnati agreement to include reimbursement of expenses for the Duke Energy Center and OTR quarantine shelter, and the resolution authorizing an agreement with University of Cincinnati Medical Center for a grant to purchase equipment for COVID long-haul patients and equipment given the current spike in admissions.
Second.
Commissioner Dreehouse?
Yes.
Summer Dumas?
Yes.
Commissioner Parks?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you both for the explanations.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your work. Okay. Our other two items are, well, no. We've got a buy leave today, a budget adjustment item. Jeff, I'm going to ask you to describe this one.
Thank you, Madam President. And I'm going to defer to our Assistant County Administrator for Budget and Finance, John Brugan, who's on the line.
Commissioners, this is a year-end adjustment. This was actually coming today by leave because it affects tomorrow's payroll posting. We're coming up a little bit short in the sheriff's medical OCA or division within the indigent care levy. This is where the corrections officers are that oversee the medical units and hospital dispatches within the sheriff's office. We're about $8,000 short on tomorrow's payroll, and this will provide $270,000, which will get them through the final payroll of the year.
Okay.
And commissioners, if I could, just very quickly, I think ultimately, and this was mentioned in the budget presentations that we had done, the use of CARES Act dollars for public safety salaries will ultimately backfill some of this salary as well. So we had mentioned the use of care in the budget presentation. We had mentioned the use of CARES Act dollars to help avoid general fund subsidy to some of our levy funds, and this is one of those instances for 2020.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions?
No questions or comments.
No questions. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to move that we approve of the budget adjustment number 48 at $270,000 for Sheriff Corrections medical personnel costs.
Second.
Commissioner Dreehouse?
Yes.
Commissioner Summer Dumas?
Yes.
Commissioner Parks?
Yes.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, the last two items are executive sessions. Is there anything else before we go into executive session?
I have nothing.
I have nothing. Thank
All right.
you.
In that case, I'm going to move that we go into executive session pursuant to RC Section 121.22G4 regarding collective bargaining, and the exec session pursuant to RC Section 121.22G1 to consider employment of a public employee or official.
Second.
Commissioner Dreehouse?
Yes.
Commissioner Summer Dumas?
Yes.
Commissioner Parks?
Yes.
Thank you.